So today we are taking a deep dive into a really fascinating stack of medical studies, psychological research, and historical frameworks to uncover what I think is a pretty radical truth about human connection.
Yeah, it really is radical.
It is. Because our mission today is to show you that love isn't just this abstract emotion or some poetic ideal. It's actually a measurable biological necessity.
Right.
And it dictates everything from the physical shape of your heart to how your genes are expressing themselves.
Exactly. We're exploring how different forms of connection literally alter our bodies and heal us.
Yeah.
And I had to say, the concept of love and specifically how we categorize different types of human connection, it's something that has always intrigued both of us.
Oh, definitely.
We spent a lot of time reading up on the psychology behind it, so seeing the hard biological data lead out in these sources, it's fascinating.
It really is. I mean, it forces this complete paradigm shift in how we view the human body. Because traditionally, we look at healing through this lens of mechanical precision. Like you get a cut, you apply a bandage, and you assume your cells just kind of do the math and repair the damage at a predictable rate.
Right, like we treat the body like it's a sealed machine.
Exactly, a sealed machine. But these studies reveal that the body is actually profoundly sensitive to the invisible emotional environment it's operating in.
Yeah, and I think the best way to illustrate that is with that study from our sources, that feels almost like like a modern-day fable.
Oh, the Blister study.
Yes, the blister stick.
I love this one. Okay, let's unpack this. So researchers brought married couples into a clinical lab setting, and they gave each person a small blister on their arm.
Right. They created this controlled, harmless, but completely identical injury across all the participants.
Yeah, and after that, they simply sent them home to just live their lives.
And the brilliance of that setup is the standardization.
Right.
The physical baseline, the actual trauma to the tissue, it's exactly the same for every single person.
Exactly. So over the next few days, researchers tracked one specific metric, which was the speed of tissue repair. And the results completely flipped the traditional pharmaceutical model on its head.
They really do.
Couples who were in loving, low-conflict relationships, they healed at nearly twice the rate of the couples living in hostile or high-conflict homes.
Twice the rate.
Twice the rate. The physical injury was identical, but the state of their relationship fundamentally dictated their biological healing process.
Yeah.
We really need to pull this apart because it challenges everything we assume about medicine.
Well, we have to look at the underlying mechanism here, right?
Yeah.
Like the actual nervous system response taking place in those homes.
Right.
The body is constantly evaluating its environment for safety.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So when you are in a warm, supportive relationship, your nervous system shifts into a parasympathetic state.
The rest and digest state?
Exactly. That is the biological mode dedicated to resting, digesting, and repairing. The body is essentially sending a chemical green light that says, we are safe from predators, so we can allocate our metabolic resources toward fixing this blister.
Wow. So the body isn't this sealed vault doing math. It's more like a highly sensitive radar dish.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it is constantly pinging the emotional environment. And if it detects hostility or a lack of safety, it reroutes all the biological power away from long-term maintenance and pours it into immediate defense systems.
That radar dish analogy is perfect, actually. When a couple is in conflict, the body floods with stress hormones.
The cortisol.
Right, cortisol and adrenaline. It shifts into sympathetic dominance, which is fight or flight mode.
Okay.
So tissue repair becomes a secondary concern. The biological imperative is simply surviving the immediate threat.
Wow. So the body will literally halt the healing of a physical wound because it believes it might need that energy to survive a predator. Which, in this case, the predator is just the tension in the living room.
Right. It's wild.
It is wild. So if the body is constantly standing for safety, we kind of have to define what kind of safety it actually recognizes. Because in modern English, our vocabulary is a bit stunted. We use the word love for everything.
Yeah, we really do.
I mean, we love our spouses, we love our coworkers, we love a good slice of pizza.
Right, it dilutes the concept.
Exactly. But the ancient Greeks used a much more precise framework to categorize different types of bonds.
Yes.
And what's remarkable is that modern clinical research maps almost perfectly onto those ancient categories.
It really does.
So starting with romantic connection, which the Greeks called eros.
Right, eros.
Yeah.
So eros represents passionate, romantic love. Plato famously described it as a pursuit of wholeness, right? Like this intense drive to find a missing half.
Yeah.
And when we look at how eros impacts cardiovascular health, The data in the sources is deeply compelling.
Yeah, there is a massive study in our sources tracking 10,000 men.
10,000.
Yeah, huge sample size. And the researchers stripped away all the complex medical jargon and just asked a very straightforward question. They asked, "Does your wife show you her love?"
Wow. Simple.
So simple. And the men who answered yes had a 50% lower rate of angina, which is the severe chest pain caused by reduced blood flow to the heart.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting. That 50% reduction held true even for men who had high cholesterol and even for men with diabetes.
So the subjective, felt experience of being loved was actually powerful enough to offer physical protection against established physiological risk factors.
Exactly.
The nervous system's perception of safety overrode the vascular damage normally caused by bad cholesterol.
It's incredible.
And this isn't an isolated finding either. There's a massive meta-analysis covering over 2 million participants that shows unmarried people have a 42% higher risk of cardiovascular disease.
Okay, but I want to challenge this narrative for a moment.
Sure.
Because whenever the topic of romantic love and biology comes up, the conversation inevitably turns to oxytocin.
Ah, right. The love hormone.
Exactly. We've all heard it called the love hormone. It's known to be anti-inflammatory, it's neuroprotective, it lowers cortisol, and it slows the heart rate. But our sources highlight a 2025 randomized clinical trial that completely complicates this picture.
Yeah, it does.
If oxytocin is nature's ultimate medicine, why did this trial show that administering synthetic oxytocin alone did absolutely nothing to enhance healing?
Well, we have this tendency in modern medicine to search for a magic bullet,
Right.
like a single molecule we can isolate and just prescribe.
Just take a pill.
Right. But the 2025 trial demonstrated that neurochemistry doesn't operate in a vacuum. Oxytocin only enhanced tissue repair when it was administered alongside positive partner interaction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The molecule actually requires behavioral context to activate its full physiological potential.
So the physical environment unlocks the chemical.
It does. From an evolutionary perspective, oxytocin acts more like an amplifier than a standalone trigger.
Okay.
If you flood a brain with oxytocin, but the person is sitting in an empty, sterile room feeling isolated, the nervous system doesn't receive the external cues required to initiate that healing cascade.
Because there's no safety.
Exactly. It's chemistry plus connection. The brain needs to verify the safety of the environment through the presence of a trusted partner.
And that verification process fundamentally alters how the brain processes reality.
Right.
Because the sources detail a 2010 Stanford experiment focusing on pain perception. Researchers applied a controlled, moderate heat source to the skin of participants.
Ouch.
Yeah, a little painful. And one group was instructed to look at photos of their romantic partners while the heat was applied.
Okay.
But the control group was given a distraction task. They had to name sports that don't use a ball.
Which is a decent cognitive distraction designed to just occupy the mind.
Sure, you're thinking about track and field or swimming, but the group looking at photos of their partners reported a significant reduction in pain.
Wow.
And more importantly, the fMRI scans showed that the literal way their brains processed, the pain signals changed.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The visual cue of their partner activated the brain's reward centers, which dampened the pain processing pathways.
And they pushed this even further in 2018 with an EEG study.
Oh, right, the hand-holding one.
Yeah. Researchers measured the brain activity of couples where one partner was experiencing pain. When the partners simply held hands, their brain waves physically synchronized.
They synced up.
They completely synced up. The neural oscillations aligned. And the degree of pain relief was directly correlated with the empathy of the partner.
Wow.
So the more the partner genuinely cared, the less pain the subject felt. The physical touch of a safe person signals the nervous system to stop bracing against the trauma.
So we can clearly see how the presence of eros protects and regulates the heart and the brain. But the biological flip side of that is sobering, because the sudden loss of that connection doesn't just cause emotional distress, it actually causes structural deformity.
Yeah.
Doctors at Johns Hopkins have extensively documented stress-induced cardiomyopathy.
Often referred to as broken heart syndrome.
Right.
It typically presents in women over 65 following a sudden, devastating emotional shock.
Like losing a spouse.
Exactly, the unexpected loss of a spouse. The emotional grief triggers such a massive surge of catecholamines. Those are stress hormones like adrenaline, that it essentially stuns the heart muscle.
Wow.
The left ventricle literally balloons outward. It takes on the shape of a Japanese octopus trap, which is why it's also called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy.
The physical structure of the organ actually deforms in direct response to an emotional void.
Yeah.
I mean, the arteries aren't blocked. It's not a traditional heart attack. But the emotional trauma and the physical trauma are completely intertwined.
It proves that the body doesn't distinguish between a physical threat and a severe emotional loss.
They're the same to the brain.
Right. The nervous system registers both as a catastrophic failure of safety.
So hearing all of this about romantic connection and cardiovascular health is incredible, but I mean, it immediately raises a concern.
Okay. What's that?
Well, what if you aren't in a romantic relationship? What if you're single or widowed? Is your biology just out of luck, or does the body respond to other types of connection?
That's a great question, and it shifts our focus to the second category of connection in our sources, which the Greeks called philia.
Right, philia.
So philia encompasses the love found in deep companionship. It is friendship, community, the bonds forged through shared experiences and mutual respect.
Okay.
And from a purely medical standpoint, philia is arguably the most underrated determinant of human health.
Well, the statistics are almost hard to believe. There is a landmark meta-analysis in our sources reviewing data from over 300,000 people.
300,000.
Yeah, and they were specifically looking at the survival value of social bonds. It concluded that people with strong social relationships had a 50% increased likelihood of survival compared to those with weak social ties.
Wow.
Yeah. To put that in medical terms, having a strong network of friends is better for your survival than quitting smoking. It is better than exercising, and it's better than treating obesity.
And research has quantified it even further. Lacking social connection carries the exact same mortality risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
A pack-a-day habit entirely generated by loneliness.
It's terrifying.
It is. And this lack of connection infiltrates the immune system directly. Sheldon Cohen at Carnegie Mellon conducted this fascinating viral experiment. He literally exposed healthy participants to cold viruses to observe who developed an infection.
Right, and the defining variable wasn't their diet or their genetics or their sleep hygiene. It was the diversity of their social network.
Yeah.
Participants who maintained 6 or more distinct social roles, meaning they actively engaged as, a spouse, a parent, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker. They were 4 times less likely to catch the cold than people with only 1 to 3 social roles.
Wow. So for the listener who is commuting to work right now or feeling totally burnt out and isolated in a cubicle, they aren't just experiencing a sad emotion. They are statistically more vulnerable to whatever pathogen is circulating in that office.
Exactly.
But I have to ask about modern technology here.
Yeah, sure.
Because we live in the most hyper-connected era in human history. We have smartphones, group chats. We can video call someone on the other side of the planet instantly. Doesn't engaging on social media or sending a text thread count as a social role and mitigate this risk?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we have to look at evolutionary biology. Because our cells are millions of years older than our smartphones.
Right.
UCLA researcher Steve Cole investigated this at the genetic level. He discovered that the subjective feeling of loneliness actually alters the expression of over 200 genes.
200 genes.
Yeah. Specifically, loneliness ramps up the genes responsible for inflammation, and it suppresses the genes that defend against viruses.
Wait, why would the body deliberately suppress its own antiviral defenses just because someone feels lonely?
It comes down to evolutionary survival mechanisms.
Okay.
For early humans, being separated from the tribe meant you were highly vulnerable to physical attacks from predators.
Because you're alone.
Right. If you are going to be bitten or wounded, your body needs an immediate inflammatory response to fight off bacterial infection at the wound site.
That makes sense.
Conversely, if you're safely surrounded by your tribe, your risk of a predator attack drops, but your risk of catching a virus from the person sleeping next to you increases.
Oh.
Right. So the body shifts its genetic expression toward antiviral defenses.
Wow. So the modern isolated cubicle worker is basically trapped in an evolutionary false alarm.
Precisely.
Their body thinks they are alone in the wilderness, about to be attacked by a tiger, so it pumps up inflammation and drops the viral shields.
Exactly the case. And when Cole's team tested digital connection against this genetic response, the results were really stark.
What happened?
In person, physical connection successfully reduced the inflammatory gene expression. But digital connection, video calls, texting, social media, it had no significant effect at the cellular level.
None.
None. A screen just does not provide the sensory cues, like the microexpressions, the pheromones, the spatial awareness that the nervous system requires to verify safety.
So digital presence cannot trick our biology.
No, it can't.
The body demands physical presence, and the global consequences of failing to meet that biological demand are severe. I mean, our sources cite a World Health Organization statistic showing that roughly 100 deaths every single hour globally are attributed to loneliness-related causes.
It's staggering.
We tend to treat loneliness as a psychological inconvenience, but it is an acute, measurable biological crisis.
Which brings us to a crucial question. If romantic love and deep friendship are both dependent on established history and time, what happens when you need physiological regulation, but you are entirely alone, perhaps in a crisis?
Right.
That introduces the third concept from our sources, which is agape.
Okay, agape. And agape is defined as unconditional, selfless love.
Yes.
It is carefreely given without any expectation of reciprocity. It doesn't rely on the passionate intensity of eros, and it doesn't require the shared history of philia. It's simply the act of extending pure care to another human being.
And while agape sounds like a purely philosophical or spiritual concept, the medical data observing its effects, particularly from complete strangers, is astonishing.
It really is. The sources highlight clinical studies tracking patients recovering from the common cold. When these patients were treated by medical clinicians who scored perfectly on clinical empathy measures, doctors who took the time to listen, make eye contact, and demonstrate genuine care,
Right.
those patients recovered a full day faster than those treated by less empathetic doctors.
A full day faster just from empathy.
Just from empathy.
Right.
And the data gets even more profound when applied to severe physical trauma. A 2024 study focused on chronic pain management. It revealed that the empathy of the physician had a larger statistical effect size on reducing the patient's chronic pain than opioid therapy or even lumbar spine surgery.
Wow.
So what does this all mean? We had to stop and consider the magnitude of that finding. How can a doctor's bedside manner, just the act of being kind and empathetic, outperform a surgical intervention or heavy narcotic painkillers?
Well, it loops back to the mechanisms we discussed with the Blister study.
Okay.
When a patient is in chronic pain, their nervous system is locked in a state of severe sympathetic arousal. The body is sounding a constant alarm.
Right.
So when a clinician demonstrates agape, when they truly listen and validate the patient's experience, they act as an external regulator for that patient's nervous system.
Oh, wow.
The empathy signals safety, the patient's anxiety drops, the fight-or-flight response disengages, and systemic inflammation decreases.
So the body starts doing the work.
Exactly. This physiological shift allows the body's endogenous pain modulation systems, its natural painkillers, to function far more effectively than external opioids could achieve alone.
And agape doesn't solely rely on interpersonal contact either.
No, it doesn't.
Because the sources detail how this form of unconditional care can be sourced internally. A Baylor University study looked at perceived divine love.
Oh, right.
So that's the internal experiential feeling of being loved unconditionally by a higher power. And they found it was strongly associated with better self-reported health outcomes and reduced stress.
That internal application is vital, particularly when we look at self-compassion. The framework of agape applies to how you treat yourself.
Treating yourself with the same unconditional patience and kindness you would offer a struggling friend.
Yes.
The research demonstrates that self-compassion produces tangible physiological changes. It physically reduces stress-induced inflammation. The alternative self-blame and harsh internal criticism triggers the exact same inflammatory fight-or-flight state as an external threat.
Whether the unconditional care originates from a stranger in a hospital, a belief in a higher power, or your own internal dialogue, the biology responds to the perception of safety just as powerfully as it responds to a pharmaceutical intervention.
Incredible. So we've traced the biology, the neurochemistry, and the genetic expression of human connection. The data clearly supports the tangible impacts of romantic love, deep friendship, and unconditional care.
Yes, it does.
But the source material introduces one final layer of connection that current medical science, frankly, cannot explain at all.
It's true.
We are moving past the observable metrics into phenomena that challenge our understanding of biology itself.
We're entering the realm of talismanic events.
Yes. Talismanic events. I was so fascinated by this part. These are heavily documented cases where individuals appear to physically experience the trauma or the state of someone they love, despite being separated by vast geographic distances. One case detailed in the sources involves a mother who was sitting at home writing a letter to her daughter, who was away at college. And without warning, the mother experiences an agonizing burning sensation in her right hand. The pain is so severe she literally drops her pen.
Wow.
Less than an hour later, she receives a phone call. Her daughter had just suffered a severe chemical burn in a university laboratory accident,
That is just...
and the burn was on her right hand, and it occurred at the exact moment the mother felt the pain.
Yeah, events like this break the foundational rules of local biology. There is no sensory pathway, no visual cue, no auditory signal that can account for that transfer of physical sensation.
And it's not limited to human bonds either.
Right, the pigeon story.
Yes. The sources include the account of Hugh Brady, a young boy who raised pigeons. He fell seriously ill and was rushed to a hospital for emergency surgery. The hospital was located 200 miles away from his home.
200 miles.
Over a week into his recovery, he hears a scratching sound at his hospital window. A nurse opens the glass, and a pigeon flies into the room, landing directly on his chest. It had a specific band on its leg. It was his bird.
That is unbelievable. An animal that had never been to that city, let alone possess the biological navigation, to find a specific window on a specific floor of a hospital 200 miles from its coop.
I mean, when you hear these accounts, your brain instantly searches for a modern analogy to make sense of it.
Of course.
It's exactly like when two smartphones ring simultaneously because they share the same cloud account, even if they are in different time zones. The information updates instantaneously across both devices. But we are talking about biological organisms here, not digital hardware.
Yeah.
How does the scientific community even begin to process this?
What's fascinating here is it requires looking beyond biology and pulling vocabulary from physics.
Physics.
Yeah. Dr. Larry Dossey, he's a physician who studies the intersection of medicine and consciousness. He suggests these events mirror quantum entanglement.
Okay, quantum entanglement.
Right. In quantum physics, entanglement is a proven phenomenon where two particles become connected. A change in the state of one particle produces an instantaneous corresponding change in the other particle, regardless of the physical distance separating them.
Wait, so the theory is that deep emotional bonds might literally entangle biological systems at a quantum level.
That is the hypothesis. Dossey also points to the concept of resonance. In physics, resonance occurs when two systems vibrate at the same frequency, amplifying one another.
Like a singer hitting the right pitch to shatter a glass.
Exactly, a classic example. Dossey suggests that when two beings are deeply emotionally tethered, their biological and neurological states might resonate, allowing for a transfer of information that bypasses standard physical sensory pathways.
Wow. But while the physics analogies offer a framework, the reality is that medical science just does not have a definitive empirical explanation for these events.
No, it doesn't. And we must acknowledge that it may never fully capture it. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant analytical minds in psychiatry, wrote extensively about this limitation. He admitted that despite decades of clinical experience and observation, he was constantly humbled by the mystery of human connection and could never adequately define it.
Yeah.
Dr. Dossey echoes that sentiment beautifully in the sources. He notes that just as a finger that points to the moon is not the moon, our scientific papers, our fMRI scans, and our inflammatory markers will never truly capture the entirety of what love is.
That's a beautiful quote. We can measure the synchronization of brainwaves, we can track the genetic suppression of inflammation, and we can time the accelerated healing of a blister. But those metrics are just the physiological footprints that connection leaves behind in the body.
Exactly.
They are the evidence of the phenomenon, not the phenomenon itself.
The mechanics remain a mystery, but the biological imperative is an established fact.
Yeah.
Our culture spends billions of dollars annually obsessing over optimization.
Oh, tell me about it.
We seek the perfect nutritional protocol, the ideal supplement stack, the most efficient workout regimen. Yet the cumulative data suggests that optimizing our connections, whether cultivating the romantic wholeness of eros, prioritizing the deep community of philia, or practicing the selfless care of agape, is the ultimate health intervention.
It really is.
And unlike the commercial wellness industry, extending care costs nothing but your own willingness to be open.
Yeah, whether it is overriding the damage of high cholesterol, rewriting your cellular defense strategy, or healing a physical wound twice as fast, connection is quite literally medicine.
It is.
Which leaves us with a final thought to consider. If the emotional environment is so powerful that it physically alters our cellular structure, our gene expression, and our immune systems in real time,
Hmm.
Could the brief, seemingly insignificant interactions we have every day be doing the exact same thing? Could the patience we show a cashier or the empathy we extend to a stranger on our commute literally be altering their biology and ours in that very moment? Are we all, simply by existing in a shared space, walking biological sculptors of everyone we meet?